change tone a little bit, and Peter Johnson. Peter Johnson is the Rev's son, and he's got the Rev's sense of humor. Actually, Peter, it may even put the Rev in check.
I got sick of dealing with relatives I'd never heard of. I'd hear them tapping on my door, and then they'd come in and say they were really sorry. They'd squeeze my shoulder and tell me I was going to be okay, that I was a very brave little boy. Sometimes they'd bring me candy. They'd always make a point not to look at my stomach. They would do anything they could to keep from looking at it. But I looked at it. I looked at it all the time. It seemed like there was nothing else to look at, nothing else that meant anything anyway. And as I'd stare at it, a little fish of an idea began to swim around in the back of my brain. It kept getting larger and larger and more distinct until I knew what I needed to do. I started out small. I asked my father to go and buy me old calculators. Lots of old calculators. I told him that I would take them apart and learn how they worked. I told him I was interested in learning how things worked. I convinced him, and he did as I asked. I got him to bring me more and more calculators, and each one I would carefully take apart, piece by piece, and each piece would be carefully categorized and stored in labeled plastic bags. I went through hundreds of calculators. At first, my parents were happy to see their little boy involving himself in something again, living again, but that didn't last long. By the time I had moved on to alarm clocks, they started to get worried. They were worried that their little boy had just substituted one obsession for another. They tried to hide it. They tried to pretend that my fascination with machines was the most wonderful thing in the world. I saw through them, but I didn't care. Nothing was more important than the work. I poured myself into it. Every waking hour was spent on the task. And before long, I had graduated from petty calculators and alarm clocks to telephones, flashlights, remote-controlled airplanes, fax machines, TVs, VCRs, Game Boys, PlayStations, computers, millions of tiny pieces, each carefully categorized and stored according to type, size, quality, and potential uses. I toiled for months. But it was not until I had snuck down to the garage and dissected my old power wheels that I was ready to begin my real work. I labored day and night under the utmost secrecy. My parents weren't allowed to know. No one was allowed to know. If they knew what I was doing, they would try and stop me, and I couldn't let anything try to stop me. My mother got more and more anxious. They weren't even trying to hide it now. She would plead with me through the locked door, begging, crying, and I would ignore her. Nothing would distract me. But finally, after months of work, even she can't complain. I have a new leg now, better than the old one. It can support thousands of pounds of weight and is practically indestructible. I can run faster and jump further than almost any other human on the planet. And it's flexible too. I can tie it up in knots if I like. Finally, my parents are content. Finally, they have their little boy back and he can run and jump and play just like he used to. Just like any little boy is supposed to. But I'm not just like any little boy. I never will be, and I never want to be just like any little boy ever again. Tomorrow I take off the other leg.
All types of stuff. That was good.